I'm very excited to introduce a conversation with the author of Creating an LGBT Inclusive Workplace, the Practical Resource Guide for Business Leaders. Now, if you're looking for actionable advice to make your professional space more LGBT plus inclusive, this is the talk for you, because our speaker literally wrote the book on it. Dr. Kryss Shane, America's co-leading in the LGBTQ plus inclusive expert, will answer all your questions in this interactive talk. She has been featured in America's go-to leading LGBT plus experts in the New York Times, ABC News, Yahoo, and CNN. She is a cast member of TLC's I Am Jazz, and her writing has appeared in the Journal of Nonprofit Education and Leadership, Huffington Post, International Council of Professional Educator Leadership, and the New Social Worker magazine, and many, many more. She's the author of 3 books. Mariella, who is hosting and moderating this next talk, will tell you all about it. My puppy wants my attention. So just briefly, I cannot sum up how amazing Mariella Marie is, who is moderating this talk. She is a Renaissance human and social impact multimedia producer who has spent a decade working with diverse technologies, independent artists, and divergent innovations across the globe to deepen her and their audience emotional intelligences. So please welcome Mariella and Dr. Kryss Shane. Take it away, you two.
Thank you, Hunter. Yes, thank you, Hunter. Go and give some love to your puppy. And Dr. Kryss Shane, you've been busy since the last time we talked. It's always a pleasure to share virtual space with you. Maybe one day we can meet each other in person finally.
Yes, please.
But you've been busy. You've released a couple more books. You have some additional titles to your name. So is there anything else? I know that Hunter gave that beautiful introduction, but is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience just to kick us off here? For those who have not joined, a session where they've heard you and I speak before here at Power to Fly, share, a little bit about Dr. Kryss Shane.
Hi. So for those of you who are new, since we only get about 30 minutes today, although I could hang out and would love to hang out with Mariella for like a million years and it would still not be long enough. We have had some conversations over the years with Power to Fly. So if there are topics that we don't get to, you can always check out Power to Fly's resources. We have other videos of all those conversations. So we have, is it deep dived, deep dove? What's the past tense? I don't know.
We were swimming all in it.
Yeah, so we've gone swimming, right? We'll just change the whole thing, right? That's a good writer trick there. In the past, we've talked about, we'll just rewrite the whole paragraph. We've gone into conversations in depth about the use of pronouns, what they are, why they matter, how to use them. We've done a few different Q&As about business leaders in the workplace and what they may need and how to make spaces inclusive. So there's that. There's also the book. So those resources are available. Also, my website, thisiskryss.com, this is KRYSS.com, has a contact feature. If you have questions that we didn't get to, you can always reach out that way. So hopefully this gives everybody sort of this overarching kind of option and access to things. And, it's always tricky, I think, when we are talking live and have a live audience. And also we know people will be checking this out in the future through the recordings now, or when we throw it back to them in our future conversations. We are the past, the present, and the future, Mariella.
This is great. And actually, my first question to you has to do with time travel. So
okay.
I know that you want to share, about this book that hopefully the leaders listening right now, and if you all have heard me speak before, we are all leaders to a certain extent. Maybe we don't all have the title, but we have the ability to influence and to lead, if not just ourselves, our community, our family, our friends, our colleagues, our peers. So basically everyone who's listening now, pick up this book. You've got practical resources in here, specifically for business leaders. So I want to travel back in time a little bit so that we can understand why you decided to write this book. Because I know you speak in several spaces, with the education world, in the workplace. So, take us back in time and what made you finally give that go? Like, I need to get this published. I need to share these resources because, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth because ... What did you want in that moment, Kryss?
Right. So this is going to seem a little bit tangential. I promise it connects. I've been thinking actually a lot about, it was, for those who are here live, it was just Juneteenth. And so I've been thinking about that. And I've been thinking about when we do things that are also recorded, sometimes as speakers, we don't bring up any sort of dates or holidays because we don't want somebody listening later to be like, oh, well, this is outdated, turn it off. The sort of interesting thing on this one, when it comes to Juneteenth, when it comes to Pride Month, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Black people and LGBT plus people are not Santa. They do not disappear after the set holidays. They don't. They exist all year. And sometimes that gets a little bit tricky because sometimes we think this is the category of people we focus on for this 1 month. And then the next month, there is a new group of people we're supposed to focus on. And we all just jump from one to the next, right? Like we know Black History Month means that we all are aware Black people exist from February 1st until the 28th or maybe the 29th. But March 1st, we got other stuff. The tricky thing with that is that Black people and what they need don't stop existing on March 1st. And LGBT plus people don't stop existing when we get to July 1st. But I've really been thinking about that acknowledgement of Juneteenth happens during LGBT plus month, right? During Pride Month. And I was thinking about what that means. And I mean, look, I do this work. I'm in this DEI space or DEIB when we add in belonging. So I was thinking about where that comes from, that kind of time travel question. I grew up in small town Ohio, 90-ish% white people there. But one of my closest friends growing up and my prom date are both Black guys. And that's a thing we do, right? Like when we're not a person who's a part of a group, the first way we let everybody know we're not the racists or the sexists or the homophobes or the transphobes is that we bring up, right? Like that whole, like, I have a Black friend thing. I have a gay friend. Because we're trying to let people know we're not like them. So I had my longtime friend and my prom date were these Black guys. But I didn't realize until more recently, I didn't know anything about their experiences. Like I knew them. I knew they were Black. I knew they were like some of the only Black kids at the school. It never crossed my mind at the time to ask anything or to be observant of anything of their experiences. Because I was in that space of like, but I don't see color, which was the thing in the 90s that, was like, that's what the good people said, without realizing that what we were essentially saying is like, Mariella, I will see some of you, but not all of you. I will acknowledge some of your experience and be intentionally blind to other aspects of who you are, which is, problematic at best. So then I started thinking about what was the music of that time? What was I listening to? Specifically the Black music, right? Because Juneteenth, and that's sort of where I was, which brought me to Lauryn Hill. I still think her version of Killing Me Softly is fantastic. I will tell you, it is not a great choice for karaoke. I've learned this the hard way. There's this whole middle portion that's all instrumental where there's nothing except to awkwardly stand there on the stage till it's time to sing again. Don't make that mistake that I have made many times. So one of the things when I was looking up about Lauryn Hill's album, thinking specifically about the 98 album, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, I just found out that the title of that was inspired by Carter G. Woodson's 1933 novel that's called The Miseducation of the Negro. In that, the author once said, and I'm going to read this quote directly, if a race has no history, it has no worthwhile tradition. It becomes a negligible factor in the thoughts of the world, and it stands in danger of being exterminated. And when I look at that, I think about this intersection that we're in of Juneteenth and Pride Month and the political aspects of conversations about this concept of critical race theory? Can we remove talk about racism and slavery and people who were enslaved? Can we remove conversations about gay people and transgender people from our education system? And not just K through 12, not just college, though I've written books on those too. But what are we educating our professionals in the workplace about? What are we talking about? What are we training about? And when I think about that, then I think about like, okay, what do we know about Black history? Like, right, what was I taught about Black history? All right, George Washington Carver was the dude with the peanuts and peanut butter. Martin Luther King is in a page of one of my history books. Harriet Tubman was there. I could name some more. LGBT plus history. What do we know? Some of us know about Harvey Milk. Some of us more now than ever have learned about Stonewall. Maybe some of us know about Marsha P. Johnson. I could name some more. What do we know about white people and white history? Oh my God, I could be here forever. And what does that say? Right? Like, what does it say that I can probably count the number of things I was taught about the existence and the contribution of Black people and of other people also of color, although Juneteenth is about Black people. I can count the things I was ever taught about LGBT plus history, but not the number of things about white people and white history. So thinking about this whole idea of what are we doing with that, we have to think about where that leaves us. What are we talking about in our workplaces? Where are we taking opportunities to be intentionally inclusive, not because we are saying we are intentionally inclusive? Like, it is one thing to be like, hey, I'm having a party, I'm going to invite my Black friend Mariella. That's weird, right? But we do that. We do that every time we hit February. We now do that every time we hit Juneteenth of like, hey, look at me as a business or a business owner or a leader. Look at all the Black stuff I can talk about. We do this so often during Pride Month, or every time that we see another George Floyd, another Breonna Taylor, another Tony McDade. All of a sudden, many of us hop on our social media and we put maybe that Black square for right after George Floyd was murdered, or we hashtag say her name because we see other people do that. Maybe we put up that rainbow flag. Maybe some of us are super into it. And so we put up that progress flag, right? That's the one that's got the triangle on the left, because now we recognize the intersection of Black and brown people and of trans people. And then we go back to our day because we've done the thing we needed to do, right? We've done the so-called work, but when it feels like work, it's not inherent in what we're doing. And so when I look at, circling all the way back to the beginning, I promised you we'd get there. Why did this book get written? It got written because it shouldn't be a thing we do or talk about during set times on the calendar, but something that's always there. And for those who are coming in from the last amazing talk, Power to Fly just does that, right? Like every single guest, every single conversation is epic. Every time, every event, coolest Rolodex of anybody, of any group, of any website ever. And present company with Mariella very much included in that one. What are we doing to be more inclusive? Are we talking to people about what their experience is? Are we hiring people in because we know we need to do better, but then once we've hired them, we check the box and we move on? Are they all low-level employees who eventually just quit? Are we figuring out why we can hire in 10 people in a demographic and 2 of them are the only ones left at the end of a year? What are we looking at? What are we doing? And so the book covers everything from terminology and things like pronouns to opportunities to practice some of the skills that are taught, to direct ways to put that practice into work, scripts for how to talk to your supervisors and your different stakeholders, how to deal with people who object, how to deal with what happens if you are in a state or a country that is not as inclusive naturally, and how to make sure that you are always mindful that whoever you are some level leader and you are holding power in some way, regardless of what levels you see yourself as not being empowered yet, there is some level of power that each of us has, because as long as we've got mouths and voices, we do have some access to being heard. So that was a very long answer to a question, Mariella.
And I appreciate you taking us into, behind the curtain of what happens in your mind. I appreciate the intersectionality of, recognizing any marginalized person, there are history that is being either, swept under the carpet or, diluted or, misused and used, for someone else to gain something else, and there's no reciprocity. So something that comes to mind, is this virtue signaling that folks are speaking of, this performative allyship, and just how to go beyond that. The heart and the soul is missing, essentially. It's like we're just being superficial about this work a lot of times. And so I love the call in to find the heart and put some, soul into this work, so that it's not just performance, it's a practice. And that brings, integrity, that brings a sacred quality to it. So thank you so much for that. Have you received any pushback from the book that you are sharing with the world? Are there people that are like, wait, this is too far. I see what you're saying, but I'm not ready for this. Can you, tell us, for those people who might be on the fence about diving into these kinds of resources, and I've checked the box, I put up my, as you said, my black square or, my rainbow flag. I don't need to open this book. What is the invitation for folks who might be on the fence?
Yeah, so I think pushback is kind of inevitable. And that is something that instinctively is not our fault. Our brains are hardwired to repel against things that aren't familiar. It doesn't matter what the thing is. And we see this with babies when we introduce a new food. Also, if you go to a restaurant with me, because I'm a Midwestern kid, you will see that reaction to me if you introduce a new food to me. I'm not going to pretend that we're not friends and that's not true, right? Like there's something in us that immediately is like, nope, don't like that. Don't want to do it. Don't like it. Not going to learn it. New words, no, I already know enough. And that enough thing comes up, right? So we start with this whole, it's new and no. And then many of us have reached the point now where we've gotten past that, right? Now we are willing to put up the rainbow flag. We are willing to turn our business logo rainbow for the month of June. We might be willing to put something about belief in equity and equality in our email signature line. Maybe we've gotten to the point where we're willing to put our pronouns in our signature line of our emails or on our websites, right? We're pushing past that. And sometimes we get to this place where the pushback is, but that's what look at all we've already done. And that's a start, but it's also not enough. This whole idea of, but we've already given you X. Why are you still wanting more? Or why are you trying to tell us how to be an ally? Even if I say words wrong, if I'm trying to be an ally, how dare you correct me? And if you're going to correct me, then maybe I'll just stop being an ally. Well, that's our own ego, right? Like that's us thinking, I don't want to feel that moment of embarrassment that someone told me I got something wrong. I don't want to have to keep doing more. And if you're in this space of feeling like that, that's a self-reflection point. Because if we care about people, if we look at the research that is constant and consistently showing us that self-harm and suicide rates of employees are significantly higher when they do not feel and are not safe in the workplace, when we're looking at, we want to save money, one great way to save money is to slow your turnover rates. If you're looking at it even just purely business, bringing in the best employees and then keeping them is a really, really, really good way to make more money and not have to spend it doing a hiring process and having to retrain and having to onboard and having to figure out why people left. All of that, you're solving all at the same time when you continue to work towards the consistency of being inclusive, not just in a moment, but as a practice, and looking at what's in me that makes me feel like if I got corrected, that it makes me want to pull back. What is it that if I use a word and somebody says to me, actually, we don't use that word anymore, and here's what we use instead? What's inside me that makes me think, well, you can pound sand for all I care. If you're going to be like that, then I'm done. Right? Like that doesn't work. We don't want to have authentic friendships or romantic relationships or relationships with our siblings or children or parents where if we don't get something perfect the first time, they leave us or we leave them. We want to have those authentic moments, and we want to create it being safe enough that when we make a mistake or our language has evolved and we're a little behind, that someone feels safe and comfortable enough to let us know. Because if I screw up, yes, that's 5 seconds of I said a word wrong and I didn't know I did it. If I've created a relationship strong enough with Mariella that they feel comfortable saying to me, hey, so for example, we used to call them preferred pronouns. We don't use the word preferred anymore because we recognize that who somebody is their identity. It's not a choice. So now we just say, what are your pronouns? I've now found out, I made sure in our relationship, Mariella felt safe enough with me to tell me this. And also, Mariella was kind enough to let me know something so I don't keep saying the wrong thing. Because most of us are not getting it wrong on purpose, right? Some people do. We see them all over the internet. If you read the comments to anything about Pride Month or Juneteenth, you can find all those people very easily. Those of us who are here are probably not the people getting it wrong on purpose. We're the ones getting it wrong because we're still growing. And that growth process has to continue. It's the same way that the slang words that we use, the emojis that we use, the bitmojis that we use keep evolving, right? Like 30 years ago, when I was, I don't know, high school, however old I was, if some boy would have drawn me a picture of an eggplant, I would have been very, very confused. But today, if some boy texts me a picture of an eggplant, I know exactly what he means because our language evolves. I am one of the late people in my friend group to have gotten the bitmoji and have the little cartoon picture that looks like me now. And yes, she does wear a tie-dye t-shirt and tie-dye sneakers because she looks like me. But that's because things evolve. It went from I could be smiley with the colon and the closed parenthesis to now there's a little orange circle with a smiley face in it to now I have a bitmoji that looks like me who's smiley. Or here's a GIF or a GIF that is a person smiling. We do that instinctively. We understand that it's different and we have to give allowances when we talk to grandma because grandma doesn't really know so much what's going on. We don't want to be those people. We want to be those leaders that are on top of it or that are ahead of the curve. So this really, I think, comes down to even the people that are pushing back, they're trying to push backwards in time. They're trying to push us back to a time that doesn't exist anymore. It's no longer optional to be inclusive. The consistent research and records are showing it's something like 80% of people are looking for inclusive workplaces. They want to work with groups of people that have levels of diversity. That doesn't just mean the lowest level. That means they want to see different looking people of different beliefs and backgrounds and education and identities and genders and races and ethnicities and immigration statuses at all of the levels. So even if you've got your lowest level where everybody's all different sorts of rainbow colors on your website, if you keep going up the pyramid, if everybody that's C-suite are all middle-aged white men and you know them and so you know they're all straight and they are all cisgender, which is the word for not transgender, that tells you there's work to do. There's growth that can be made. And why is it that none of those people of all those rainbow colors and backgrounds are moving up the ranks any further than that bottom level?
You're unpacking a lot, and we've got about 4 minutes left.
Never enough time.
I'm trying to trying to figure out how I want to help wrap this up. Okay, so I mentioned before on your previous response that the heart and the soul is missing from this work. So let's leave on a positive note. How can folks channel and harness and find their flow in this space, being inclusive, however they identify, in particular, since we're seeing a how can we put the heart and the soul into this work when all the other pressures around us are telling us to look the other way? So what's one thing that someone can do starting today to make sure that the heart and the soul is not missing?
I think personalizing it is huge. I think whatever industry you're in, the fun thing about the world we live in now with technology is that we can search anything. Spend a few minutes, search out who are the top LGBT plus or the top gay or the top lesbian or the top transgender leaders in your field, and reach out and connect with them on LinkedIn, or learn about them and share about them with the people you work with. Who are the top Black leaders in that space? Who are the top Black gay leaders or Black trans leaders or Black female trans leaders in your space? What's happening wherever you live? What is the history in your community? You can look up, thanks to the internet now, what's happened in your town or your community, where you live or where you grew up or where you visit. Any of those places that are personal for you, look it up. See who is within your world that you didn't know was in there. Because the more you recognize people have always been there, even if you didn't notice them, the more you'll start to be intentional about noticing them. And then the key piece of that, share what you learn. Share it on your social media, share it when you're having conversations. I mean, I don't know if we're water cooler talking in a time of COVID, but we have Slack chats going on. We've got hashtags on Twitter going on. We have LinkedIn communities. When you're sharing what you're learning, it makes it easier for other people to quickly learn. And when you're using your social media to follow people who are either in the activism space or who are leaders in your profession or in your community, who don't look or love or identify like you, it's just something that becomes part of your everyday orbit, because you don't have to look for it. It's already going to be there. And the more that you promote that to others, the more you spread that opportunity for growth and development.
I love that. Being more hands-on and finding our voice in the space instead of, just being on the sidelines. So what a beautiful way to end this conversation. Just remind all of our listeners now where they can pick up your book, the name of your book again, and how they can connect with you on socials.
Absolutely. So you can find me on social media pretty easily. My website is Kryss. This is KRYSS.com. And through there, you can contact me. If you've got questions or thoughts, you can find links to any of my books. The book we've been talking about today is called Creating an LGBT plus Inclusive Workplace, the Practical Resource Guide for Business Leaders. Also, if you are a search engine-y person, because my name is spelled KRYSS, you can find me sometimes just by searching that at bookstore websites. Anywhere else that you are searching, you can find me pretty easily that way. And I can't end without asking where we can find you, Mariella.
Thank you so much. You always give me that reciprocity. I appreciate
Always.
You so much. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org. I am there, and I'm also producing a beautiful podcast for Grow Dialogue. And today we're launching it. So you can go to growdialogue.com and check out the podcast, where we are actually talking about things like this, like how can we all be liberated, liberate ourselves, and just continue to be a ripple in the pond to make some big change. So I appreciate you, Dr. Kryss Shane. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge, and good luck with all of the things. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. So enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. I'm going to be enjoying it at the virtual job fair. It's coming up soon. And I am so excited for Hunter to tell us more details about that.